Wow, getting here was pretty convenient with the new bus stop opening. Yeah, but nobody comes to this park. It's absolutely secluded, so we're good to go. You brought enough of the herb, right? Are you sure it's gonna be safe? I can't get caught with this. Don't worry, this park used to be abandoned. Not a lot of people come here as is. Kevin, Sean, and Dean got off the bus on their way to the Sunrise Park. The night was chilly. The boys zipped up their jackets and pulled up their hoodies as they jumped over the fence, walking towards the gates. Come on, dude, light one. Gotta warm up. You're gonna pay for this next time. The guy took way too much money for this. I told you the dealer on the other side of town was better. Just as the boys entered the park and were about to take out their secret stash, Kevin noticed someone sitting on one of the benches ahead. Hey, look over there. What is she doing here at this time of the night? Does it really matter? She looks hot. And alone. Let's go. Kevin took out his mask. Gotta follow the rules in times like this, keeping distance from everyone. Sean and Dean noticed a girl turn to look at them. She had her face covered with a scarf. The boys walked down the path and took a seat on the bench next to hers. The girl passed a glance at Kevin before she got up and walked on. Feisty, so she wants some privacy. The boys laughed and joked as they ran to catch up to her. Hey there, how you doing? Are you guys following me? Do you think I'm beautiful? We just want to be friends with you. Why don't you join us, gorgeous? We'll have a fun time tonight. I think you're beautiful. You're calling me beautiful, but you haven't seen my face. Then show us your face. Just because of the pandemic doesn't mean we can't be friends. We're all wearing masks. Yeah, we'll take our chances. The girl stared at the boys, all desperate to get a glimpse of her face. Do you still think I'm beautiful? No. No, no! Horrified by what he saw, Sean ran for his life towards the gates. But the minute he looked back, he saw the girl just inches away from him, throw him onto the ground. Do you think I'm beautiful? Yes, yes. It was early the next morning that the BIIPD in Gold River, Sacramento County was shocked to find 3 young men, identified as Kevin Jackson, Dean Miller, and Sean Wilson, lifeless inside the Sunrise Park. 2 of the boys died from having their throats slit, and the other one was found far off. His face was sliced open. Who could do something like this? This is gruesome. Officer Jason Reeves was at the precinct in East Sacramento when one of his fellow colleagues knocked on his door. James, come in. Jason, did you hear about the 3 bodies found in Sunrise Park? I haven't gone in on the details, but I've heard. Do you know who the victims are? Why? One of them is your cousin, Kevin Jackson. He's been taken to the hospital. Maybe you should go. Officer Reeves stood up, shaking his head. I warned him not to get himself involved with those kind of friends. When Officer Reeves arrived at the morgue, he was shocked by Kevin's condition. Whoever could do something like this knew no mercy. He immediately inquired the officers present at the crime scene about the security footage from the previous night. This is all we were able to recover. The footage is static, it's hard to make out anything. But we can see the 3 young men walking into the park. It seemed that they were talking to someone, but there's no one but them in the entire park. Are these cameras from the 90s? Yes, this park has been abandoned for years now. There were only a few cameras installed in the area in the 90s. Perhaps that's the reason behind them malfunctioning. When the investigation at the crime scene didn't lead to any evidence, the BIIPD assigned 2 undercops, Samuel Sanders and Robert Murray, for surveillance in the area for the following week. I'll give a round outside the park. Okay, I'll patrol inside. Officer Murray was walking around the boundaries of the park, keeping an eye on the folk who traveled to and from the area. It was sometime in the middle of the night that he suddenly heard his partner scream from inside the park. He ran as fast as he could, jumping over the fence and into the park. When he caught sight of Officer Samuel on the ground, he immediately called for backup as he rushed to help him. Officer Murray was horrified when he turned his partner around to see his face sliced from his mouth to his cheek. How did this happen? Who did this? Who did you see? It was a woman. Her face was... Officer Samuel struggled to lift his finger, tracing along his mouth before it fell lifeless to the ground. Officer down. Immediate backup required. When Officer Jason Reeves received news of the 4th attack at Sunrise Park, he knew this wasn't just any petty crime. To take down an officer, armed and equipped, there had to be something more to this. So he immediately traveled to the scene and spoke to the surviving officer. What happened here? I don't know. We both thought the park was empty. I was patrolling outside when I heard him scream. By the time I arrived, he was in a horrible condition. The only thing he could say before he passed away was that it was a woman, but there was no one else here. A woman? What is going on here? After the incident, Officer Reeves started looking into the case himself. He searched up all the records of similar crimes in and around Sunrise Park. That's when he was surprised to find out reoccurring incidents of attacks in which victims were sliced in 1955, more than 60 years ago. Soon after the incidents, the park became defamed and eventually was closed and abandoned. It was only recently, after a new bus station had opened about a week prior, that people began visiting the park once again, and the murders too began. And of all similarities among the victims, be that from 1955 or now, they were all men. As for the signature, all these men were slashed either across their necks or their faces. Remembering the last words of Officer Sanders before his death, Officer Reeves began researching the significance of these facial features. Why did this killer use this method? That's when he discovered a rather disturbing and strange legend from Japan about a slit-mouthed woman, Kuchisake Onna. There was once a beautiful woman who was wedded to an honored samurai. However, she was caught being unfaithful to her husband, and as punishment for her infidelity, the samurai sliced the corners of her mouth from ear to ear and took her life. After her death, the woman returned as a vengeful spirit. She covers her grisly mouth with a cloth or a mask, carries a sharp knife or a large pair of scissors with her. She appears at night to men in seclusion and asks them if they think she is beautiful. If the victim answers yes, she pulls off her mask, revealing her mouth. Then she asks again, is she beautiful? If her victim answers no or screams in fear, she slashes his throat, taking his life. And for those who answer yes, she slits their face from ear to ear in an imitation of her own mutilation. The only way to survive an encounter with the Kuchisake Onna is by answering her question with another question or distracting her in conversation. Upon reading the legend, Officer Reeves was confused. This legend is from Japan. How or why would this happen in Sacramento? There was only one way to get to the bottom of this mysterious case. He would go himself and spend a night at the Sunrise Park. The following evening, Officer Reeves arrived at the park, just about when everyone was heading back home. He walked down the path, observing the last of the people, trying to spot anyone suspicious. But it was quite difficult in times like these, with everyone wearing face masks. When the last person had left out the gates, Officer Reeves began his night patrol. At around 10 p.m., the winds started to pick up, and the weather became awfully foggy and chilly. Officer Reeves took out his flask and sipped on his coffee as he walked down the path, scanning the area. It was silent, as if isolated from the rest of the world. Moments later, Officer Reeves suddenly started to feel moist drops of rain splatter onto him. He pulled up his jacket hoodie and ran to a dry spot under one of the many oak trees. He looked up at the skies as the thunder started to rumble. What a day for a storm, he sighed. He stood there under the shade of the tree until the skies cleared out again past midnight, but it seemed the storm had yet to end. From all the incidents that he had researched so far, they had all occurred late into the night. He stepped out from under the tree and began walking down the path again, when suddenly he noticed a figure sitting on one of the benches in the distance. As he neared, he saw the young woman, but as soon as she turned around and gazed at him, he knew exactly what she was. "Are you following me?" she asked innocently. "Miss, what are you doing here at this hour of the night? Do you think I'm beautiful? It is really not safe to be here at this time. Do you think I'm beautiful? Miss, I don't know how you look. Do you want to see my face? Miss, where do you live?" The young woman lifted her hand and took off her scarf. Officer Reeves' heart started to pound as he stared at the woman's face. He had never seen something so gruesome, so grotesque, speaking to him, staring into his eyes. But he knew if he allowed his fear to overcome him, he wouldn't survive this encounter. Keeping his composure as if he were unbothered, he continued to ask the woman, "Miss, tell me where you live. I can escort you home." All of a sudden, the rain started to pour heavily, and the strong gusts of wind shook the trees. Officer Reeves stared at the branches begin to sway vigorously. What was happening? But just when he turned to look back at the woman, she was no longer there. He quickly scanned the area, searching for her, when he caught a glimpse of the woman walking towards the woods in the corner of the park. "Where are you going?" Officer Reeves started to run after her, but before he could reach anywhere near, she vanished into the woods. And at once, the heavy gust of wind, the rain, the strange eeriness in the air suddenly stopped. It was 5 a.m. The sky started to change as it neared the time for sunrise. Officer Reeves walked to the spot where he saw the young woman vanish. In the mud and the grass, he took out his multi-tool and began digging up the soil. And just moments into unearthing the ground, he was disturbed to find some bones, and with it, a knife. He picked it up and began brushing the dirt away. This wasn't an ordinary knife. There were Japanese symbols on it. What is a Japanese knife doing over here? It was nearly 70 years ago that an American woman named Vera Anderson lived in this town. She was known for her breathtaking beauty and took pride in her looks. Unsurprisingly, many men fancied her, and she took delight in all the attention she received. However, it was one day that she met a Japanese man named Akira Takamori, and it wasn't before long that the two seemingly fell in love. They got married and started a new life together. But soon after, Akira found out Vera was cheating on him. He was shattered and heartbroken. He didn't want to believe his wife could do such a thing. He belonged to an honorable family, and for his wife to be caught as a disloyal betrayer was a matter of shame. Akira tried to give Vera the benefit of doubt. But as the days passed, it became clear that she was hiding something from him, and it was one day that Akira caught her red-handed. He was too enraged and too hurt to say anything at the time. But when night fell, he sought revenge, and he sought justice. He took out his knife and enchanted a prayer on it. Before he returned to his wife late in the night, he slit her face from ear to ear as a punishment for the arrogance and pride she had for her looks. He then took her life for betraying him. It was on that dark night in 1955 that Akira Takamori buried the remains of his wife in this park, and it had been 70 years since Vera's spirit wandered restlessly, seeking vengeance for her life. Click on the subscribe button and check out more awesome videos on our channel. And don't forget to press the bell icon because you know it's interesting.